Mark Genco did an MA in Buddhist Studies in 2003 and is a professional Jiu Jitsu competitor that also trained as a novice monk in Japan. Mark's mission is to blend all aspects of life, spiritual and secular, with martial arts. The title of this presentation is Inner Jiu Jitsu, Integrating Jiu Jitsu, Buddhism, and Positive Psychology for Inner and Outer Success. Please, everybody, bring your hands together for Mark Genco.
This is going to be an auspicious night. Thank you for being here, everyone. I learned that word auspicious right here in this school. I graduated from Naropa University in 2003 with a master's in Buddhist studies. And before that all began, I was a martial artist. And I feel like that has been my primary identity since as far back as I can remember. For the martial artists, either in this room or that will be viewing this later on, you feel this sense of destiny when you're a martial artist. I started engaging in martial arts probably from watching kung fu movies with my brother. On Saturday mornings, we would beat the crap out of each other as best we can and try to imitate all the moves that we could. And one of the most influencing characters were the Shaolin monks. And, you know, these guys, we didn't know what they were. We didn't know anything about Buddhism, but they kicked ass, and that's all that mattered. And they were super cool to look at and calm and very Jedi-like. And so it probably did something in my consciousness, and I basically spent the rest of my life trying to study martial arts, and that's what I did. I tried other things like sports like football and wrestling and track, and honest to God, I just didn't feel like that was my thing. It was always forced. And when I was a teenager, after a little hiatus of martial arts, I entered into a dojo, and sure, it just felt like destiny. And it's been feeling like destiny ever since. And so, the martial arts people, you probably know what I'm talking about. That sense of destiny, always at your back, guiding you. You know what I'm talking about when I talk about the Shaolin monks of Saturday mornings, right? You know what I'm talking about when you say, like, Bruce Lee, what he did to us. So I studied many traditional martial arts, mostly Japanese martial arts, because that was all that was offered. I could not get into the Kung Fu yet, because there was none of that offered in my hometown. And in the year 2000, I actually got to go to the Shaolin Temple in China. And it was a transformative experience. It was just amazing, because I got to see Shaolin monks kicking some ass and being spiritual at the same time. And here at Naropa, they really are into the spiritual. Not so much of the kicking ass part, which is fine. I love the whole ahimsa thing. And I'm just all about the internalization of martial arts, just like the masters of old. So sometimes you got to kick some ass in the obstacles of your life, right? I think that's what this has all been about. It's all about empowerment. And so you don't have to be passive in that sense. You can go ahead and strangle the heck out of your obstacles if you need to. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. In 2003, 2004, I really got interested in what we would call modern-day mixed martial arts with an emphasis on Jiu Jitsu. And the Jiu Jitsu that I'm talking about comes from Brazil. And you're like, what? Brazil? Capoeira comes from Brazil, right? Well, Jiu Jitsu, yes, has Japanese origins. But if you know the story of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it has this incredible story with a family called the Gracie family that basically made martial arts real again. And it was beautiful. And I don't mean this as a put down, but some of the Japanese martial arts that we were doing just weren't realistic from a combative point of view. Now, what happened though, and this is where my book, Inner Jiu Jitsu, is all about, is that I felt with the combative aspect being highlighted so much and so well from the Brazilian aspect, the Brazilian emphasis of jiu-jitsu, I felt, though, that there was the losing of what those traditional Japanese martial arts were teaching us. Some of the values were being lost, and it was becoming a little too much emphasis on fighting. And so I've been seeking to basically reintegrate the values and the attributes and the wonderful internal aspects of traditional martial arts with this modern martial art known as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That is what inner Jiu-Jitsu is now. So it is basically Jiu-Jitsu, the concepts of Jiu-Jitsu, which I'll explain in just a second, like efficiency, leverage, mastering space, and applying it to your life. And that's what everyone is trying to do in one shape or form. So I have two purposes here. I have a very spiritual crowd here, which I love, and I got to somehow educate you just a little bit on the martial aspect of jiu-jitsu, and then there's going to be a bunch of jiu-jitsu viewers who I feel could benefit from a spiritual kind of approach, and it's the blending of the two. That's what inner jiu-jitsu is all about. So the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of space. When I was here at this school, we studied and we made a huge deal about space. Trungpa Rinpoche's space. There was like in giant books that were written about the idea of space, and it was beautiful. And I'm just going to simplify it right now and just call it potentiality, okay? Potentiality. And for this, I'm going to show you basically a little physical technique, and then we're going to use that physical technique as a metaphor, okay, for the rest of the night. So I need an assistant. Sherry Pasco, can you come up, please? Talk about destiny here, okay? As Sherry comes up, I've known Sherry for many, many years, but then I literally swear to God, yesterday, 24 hours ago, I find out through Facebook, she's like, hey, I'm coming to your talk. I'm like, sweet. And then I'm like, wait a minute. We start talking, and she's like, I went to Naropa. And I'm like, are you serious? She actually went to Naropa at the same time I was here, and I just found out 24 hours ago. Even though we've been doing jiu-jitsu for over a decade, not necessarily in the same team, but we've known each other for over a decade. So I think that's a sign of destiny. Let's give it up for destiny. All right, so this idea of space. In jiu-jitsu, you start out, basically, if it's an altercation or a fight or a match, there is some space, otherwise known as distance, between you and the opponent. And I figure that this space in this context is that sense of potentiality. Anything can happen. Potentiality can be dangerous, right? You could have a lot of bad, destructive things that can happen, and you could have some beautiful things that can happen. In my book, in my approach, in my inner jiu-jitsu movement is basically about how to limit the negative possibilities and increase the positive outcomes, or at least the chances of a positive outcome. So we're all together on this, yeah? All right, so we have some distance. Let's say I'm the bad guy, okay? Sherry is the innocent bystander, and the distance between us, from a jiu-jitsu point of view, gets closed very rapidly, okay? So now I'll take off the robe. And let's just pretend, as a bad guy, I close that distance and I make it very negative very quick. So I come in, I take her down. Let's just bring your head this way and then come down, Sherry. Boom. Take her down. And it gets more destructive. This is one of the first lessons you learn in jiu-jitsu. It's called the dismount technique, okay? So, literally, this is one of the first techniques. This represents a bad thing in life. It could represent stress. It could represent horror. It could represent annoying conversations with people you don't like. It could represent traumatic things. Because look it, there's nothing good that's going to come out of this for Sherry right now if she doesn't have the right training. Unfortunately, I can hit her but she cannot really hit me. And I have my weight on her, pinning her down. And I have gravity. So you can sense the metaphor quite easily, yeah? I'm going to back up just a little bit so we don't fall off the stage. But my whole point is that with the right amount of training, just like any spiritual training, it can lift you up, and it can, again, limit those negative consequences and increase the positive ones. So watch what's going to happen with just a little bit of training, a little bit of strategy, and precise mindset, okay? I'm going to do what's called the Frankenstein grip, which is, I'm going to do this, okay? I'm going to put my hands on Sherry's throat, and Sherry, because she has jiu-jitsu training, will do just something really easy. She's just going to grab hold of the arm, and she's going to collapse down in some way most of my arm onto her. And what this is doing is a symbol, it's a very bodhisattva-like symbol. It's embracing life. She's going right into the suffering, and she's taking it on. With precision and intelligence, though. That's where the technique is. Watch what's going to happen. It looks really bad for her. She's also going to take her left foot, and she's going to trap my foot. Can you see this? We're going to just turn just slightly. Okay? See how the foot is trapped? Now, what happens is we pretend that I'm like a table, and two legs of the table now have been cut, so the table will fall very easily. So she doesn't have to have a lot of strength. She doesn't have to have a large amount of ki or chi or prana or anything like that. All she has to do is gently lift her hips up and roll off her left shoulder, and I tip over. Now, look what happened. The role got literally reversed. The tables have turned. That is not a metaphor now. She's on top. She would then pass the leg, or which we call passing the guard, and she could mount if she wanted. Now I'm in deep trouble. If she decided to strike to teach me a lesson, she could. And if I didn't like the strikes, I would probably turn my back. And then she would do what's called the strangulation or the choke. It's called the rear naked choke. And she's going to put it on, and you'll know it works when my voice changes. That means it's working. And then I tap. Now that little technique has a huge amount to teach us about life. Thank you very much, Sherry. Sherry trains at Easton BJJ, which is a school right here in Boulder, and they told me that they will give all of you a free class if you go there. So, what that just taught you, though, is that with the right amount of training, the right amount of technique, the precision, it is intelligence. You can't go in there with randomness in life. You have to, learn successful techniques in order to succeed. And that's what happens. You can reverse your negative situations. You can come up on top, or at the very least, get out of a really bad situation. You can neutralize some of the negativities. And so I think that this sense of jiu-jitsu is like a spiritual modality. I think it's one of the highest. In jiu-jitsu, we're always talking about that prefix, the Ju part, the jiu-jitsu part, the Ju of the jiu-jitsu, right? And that is referring to efficiency and harmony. What greater spirituality can you think of when you think of efficiency? When you think of leverage? Let's talk about leverage for a second. You take a crowbar, right? And you can work miracles with a crowbar if you think about it. From a physical point of view, a small device can rip open a very heavy door. That's a miracle. And jiu-jitsu gives you leverage points all the time. My book is basically saying, find the leverage points in your life and use them to your advantage. Another concept is efficiency. Make your life more efficient and you'll feel better. If you feel better, don't you perform better in everything you do? It's a simple concept, but so many of us aren't using it. In jiu-jitsu, you're always trying to find techniques that make things more efficient. And if you don't know what efficient means, it just means maximizing and basically minimizing wasted energy. Isn't that beautiful? That is a traditional martial art mindset right there. That is the same fundamental understanding of Tai Chi and Aikido. And I feel like the philosophy of Aikido applies to Jiu Jitsu, but we just have a slightly different way of doing it physically. I also think it relates to Buddhism. Buddhism, to me, is one of the greatest self-improvement modalities you can think of. It raises your understanding of the world, and it cuts down on suffering. This situation that I just did with Sherry represents suffering. And you can cut down on the suffering with the right techniques. That's what the Buddha is teaching us, right? The Eightfold Path. First, you start off with right view. In Jiu Jitsu talk, that's basically saying you start off from the view that when you're in altercations and fights in life, you see it for what it is. You don't run away. You take it on if you have to. And you see it that there is a chance of a way out. It's always teaching you that there's a way out, even if you're weaker and not as strong as the other person. Then you have like right effort, right? Right effort or right intention, let's say. You have the intention to better your life through jiu-jitsu. And that happens by the mere fact that it's so physical, it's so demanding, it's so awesome. You're going to get endorphins running through your body. And it makes you a better person on at least the physical level. And what happens on the physical level, you have other changes too. Things that you can't measure. Suddenly you're just feeling better in general. You don't want to take intoxicants or drugs when you're doing jiu-jitsu because, let's be honest, you can't train that well the day after from a hangover. And that's a simple concept, but it cuts down on a lot of the negativities of life right there. You have this sense of right speech. Now you're thinking like, what? Right speech? How does that relate to jiu-jitsu? When we speak, we try to honor and basically uphold honesty. I'm telling you, when you're in a match or you're fighting in a physical altercation, it's the most honest part of you that comes out. And I guess you have to be a fighter to understand it. But you don't hide. There's no facade that you can hide behind. When you're in a match, your truest aspect comes out, and that is honesty. And I think that's kind of connected to right speech. I'm skipping around really quick, but I just got to finish up. Right livelihood is basically what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about making a livelihood of martial arts that is positive and wonderful for everyone. You're increasing, it's what Jigoro Kano, he was the creator of Judo, which has tons of roots with Jiu-Jitsu. It's what he was talking about with creating a more enlightened society. You know, he didn't use the word enlightened. Right livelihood is totally integral with this talk that I'm giving right now about inner jiu-jitsu. And then finally, I'm going to skip right to the last one with the Eightfold Path. You have what's called right concentration, right? Well, when you're in sparring or fighting, you will get into these flow-like states, right? Flow-like states that are impossible to describe, but yeah, I know everyone here has felt it at least a couple times. Intimate moments, very physically demanding moments, dangerous moments. That sense of no mind where you're just like in the flow, and it's beautiful. And then you're like, wow, what happened? Where was I? That happens a lot when you're in a fight or in a match. And jiu-jitsu brings it out, and it does it in a safe manner, and it feels good. And you know what? People become better human beings through jiu-jitsu. So, in closing, I just want to say, for my spiritual-minded folk, find a good martial art that is demanding and awesome, and you'll love it. It will increase your spirituality. Yes, it will. Your meditations, I know you're not trying to judge meditations, but they will feel better, okay? And for my jiu-jitsu folk, find spirituality in your jiu-jitsu. Find ways to become a better human being. My last statement is this. In my book, in the last chapter, I talk about this concept that does not come from Buddhism. It comes from this other tradition called Kashmir Shaivism. And really quick, it goes like this. Tanana anurupa grahaya grahaka petat. Basically, you are not a passive actor in this universe. Every action that you have and that you do, whether you think you're not having an impact or not, will have an impact. So make your impacts on the world the most positive ones you can. Become more efficient and watch your life improve in every way. Thank you very much.